Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. The world in this game looks empty. How many times did you hear someone say that in a negative context about some open world RPG? It's one of those phrases that became overused recently and because of that it kinda lost its meaning. The exact same happened with the word realistic. A lot of people throw these phrases left and right when they wish to describe something bad about these games. I think this trend started when AAA developers adopted the bigger equals better philosophy, when the size of the map became one of the main measurements for the quality of the game and everyone started making these huge open worlds, even in games where it doesn't make sense. It was one of those trends that took the gaming industry by storm, and it's relevant even today, but maybe not to that extent like in the beginning. I can see how this concept of wide open areas started to be more appealing to a lot of developers because it was really easy to promote this feature as one of the best things about their games. Explore a vast open world sounds extremely marketable, right? Lose yourself within the world and do whatever you want. The first part of that sentence is something that you can expect from pretty much every huge open world. However, the promise of do whatever you want or be whoever you wanna be are some of the biggest lies you can hear. Only a few selected open world RPGs came close to delivering such experience. Anyway, it didn't take long for people to realize that the quality of content within the world is what truly matters, regardless of the map size. Shocking, I know. But here's an interesting thing about empty open worlds with huge areas. They are actually realistic. A lot more realistic compared to some games with smaller maze-like levels or hub areas with vertical design. The levels in those games are obviously developed to provide the player interesting and engaging content without too many empty areas. In case you haven't noticed, that's not how the real world works. This is why I hate using the word realistic when I'm talking about games in general, because it usually doesn't make any sense. Just because something is more realistic, it doesn't mean it's more fun. An exception to this rule is when RPGs are focusing on such features, like Kingdom Come Deliverance. The open world in that game could easily be described as empty, even though the game has a ton of content. But it's definitely realistic and fun to explore if you ask me. Speaking of realism, I have a lot of Skyrim combat mod videos, and I usually see a couple of comments that make me laugh. Especially when it comes to a mod which allows your character to do a dodge roll. Some people point out in the comments that dodge rolling is stupid because it's unrealistic. Even though Skyrim has a ton of unrealistic features, and I'm not even talking about dragons or magic. How about the fact that you can smack someone in the face with a huge greatsword or a hammer and they don't even flinch? The lines are blurred when it comes to this topic. And there is a difference between realistic and believable. You're willing to believe that dragons and magic are real within this fantasy setting, but these other unrealistic things are obviously in the game because of the gameplay mechanics, which could be completely based on realism, loosely based around it, or not based on realism at all. But like I said, just because something is more realistic, it doesn't necessarily mean it's more fun. Fun is highly subjective though. I can find enjoyment by just walking through some huge open areas without doing anything if it feels good. It's great to have this freedom as an option. It only becomes a problem if that's everything that the game has to offer. The empty open world argument is only valid if the content in the game is overshadowed by the size of the map. If you are spending a lot more time traveling from point A to point B than actually doing something quote-unquote meaningful or finding something interesting, then it could be a problem, but it depends on the game. There are some games that specifically focus on traveling mechanics or features which affect your exploring experience, like games with survival mechanics. But in most open world RPGs, it's easy to feel the emptiness of the world if you spend a lot of time by just traveling without any interaction. Is this good or bad? Well, depends on who you ask. I personally don't have a lot of problems with this. I like when the game offers me the freedom to choose when I'm going to do something and just let me go to explore the world. Some people get bored easily if the game is not trying to engage them in activities all the time. And I'm guessing those people would be the first to describe the world as empty. For me, these games are all about the freedom you have and the ability to choose what to do next. If the game is bombarding you with things to do behind every corner, I wouldn't consider that as a good game design. Fast travel can also be a big factor when it comes to this. The majority of open world games have some form of fast travel, although that feature can make some other specific problems within the game. It's an entirely different discussion for another time, believe it or not. Anyway, there are a lot of different reasons why someone could describe the world as empty, and it doesn't have to be related to the size of the map. Biomutant is the most recent open world RPG that I played, so it's still really fresh in my memory. I think that game is a good example of how the world can feel empty, but not because it has a lot of open areas with nothing to do or find. The clan wars, which is one of the main quests in the game, is extremely shallow, repetitive and predictable, which is one of the main reasons why this open world can feel really empty. So yeah, you can make a lot of different arguments why the world in a game can feel empty. But people who leave this kind of comments are usually referring to the actual emptiness of the map itself. If you ask me, I don't think those people even like open world games. Just before I started working on this video, I've made a community post about this topic. There are some really interesting comments that you guys left and I'm going to read a couple of them. The top comment comes from the guy called Boroda and he says, "Emptiness in an open world, when done correctly, can be one of the most enjoyable and serene experiences in a game. However, there is a difference to where you can tell that something is missing, can detect an absence of content that needs to be there, as opposed to a vast and beautiful landscape that doesn't need anything more. A lack of enemies or things to find can make the world feel like there is a lack of threat or excitement. Something like Metal Gear Solid 5, for example. Beyond enemy outposts, there is nothing, the world is barren." I can't really comment on the Metal Gear Solid 5 because I have only played about 10 hours or so, but I totally agree with this person. Matt King TV says, "I believe when most people say empty, what they really mean is uninspired, honestly. Like, emptiness isn't always bad, it leaves some breathing room on the map, but make sure that breathing room is still neat." I agree, but like I said before, most of the comments that I see at least refer to the actual emptiness of the map, which is kinda stupid, but there you go. Slavian or Slavjan says, "When the world doesn't have purpose. To explain myself better, empty world means for me when placed assets don't have purpose. It doesn't have to be activity, but carefully placed vista, objects placed to tell story of what happened here and there makes difference. I would say this is connected with the environmental storytelling, which is obviously important for immersion. And I totally agree that most of the assets should be placed with purpose and not just randomly. The gentleman with the Japanese name, which unfortunately I can't pronounce, he says, depends on the location. If it's a massive city and it only has 20 NPCs like Dragon Age Inquisition, that's a bit meh, honestly. If it's in the wilderness, then it's completely understandable. How many animals or caves / dungeons, etc. do you usually see when walking in forests IRL? This is related to the realism topic that we already discussed. Dragon Age Inquisition did have problems with big cities, or specifically the lack of them. I didn't like how all of those major cities are not connected with the open world. Anyway, you guys left a lot of insightful comments about this topic, as you usually do when it comes to any RPG discussion on this channel. That just shows how passionate you are about RPGs, and I couldn't be happier with this community, to be honest. That would be all for this video. Tell me your opinions about empty open worlds in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more RPG contents. If you want to support the channel in the long run, consider becoming a Patreon or a YouTube member. You can get your name on the end credits, as well as some other perks like early access to videos, Discord roles, my plans for future content, etc, etc. That will be all, and I'll see you in the next one.